Hello guys, Lid here. So I've been playing around with this setup for like past few days, and the purpose of the setup is to be able to do both mapping and pausing and perform there at a high level. So in this specific one, I began from Frostmage because Frostmage is the highest DPS for pausing. And because of that, that limits my choice for the mapping portions into only Stormmage because we don't have that many minions. And also something like Arsonist and Sniper, both of them doesn't really scale the same way with Frostmage. So for examples, this setup is a crit setup, and Arsonist and Sniper is not really going to scale well with crit chance because the base crit is way too low, and if you're forcing it, it's going to have pretty low crit chance and just end up being like unstable DPS. And in mapping, you cannot really like throwing Eye of Winter all the time. That's just going to slow you down. And because of that, the options for the mapping is Stormmage. But fortunately, Stormmage is actually pretty good on mapping. Now, for the Stormmage itself, a lot of people, I think, already try and play around with Stormmage early on the early access. And I think all of them using the Reni prototypes is a chest that basically make your enemy around you have your lightning resistance. Usually people combine that with Ventor because you can get minus lightning resistance, and that minus lightning resistance is going to apply to enemy around you. And on this particular set, I'm not using that. And the reason for that one, because the Reni prototype comes with a very severe downside, which is defense. Number one, your lightning resistance doesn't apply to lightning damage anymore, so any lightning damage come to you is not reduced by your lightning resistance, which is a pretty big downside. And there is a line that going to like kind of helps with that, which is armor applied to lightning hit. The problem with that is right now armor is kind of garbage, so that doesn't really help with lightning with hit. And even if it did, you're still going to take a lot of lightning damage over time. Although the source of lightning damage over time is not really that much on the game, but it's still a downside that you have to deal with. And I just decided to not deal with that at all, and I just move into a normal setup, so I'm not using any prototype. Also, because this is a crit setup, meaning it's not going to be cheap because the jewel for minion crit setup is pretty expensive. The cheapest one with only 3 stat on the jewel is like 3 define at the very least. If you want a good roll, that can be a lot more expensive. If you go for a 4 stat jewel, that can skyrocket the price up to like 20, 30 define or even more. In this case, I'm using the cheaper one, but still I'm using like 10 to 11 of them, so that's like 30 define already just from the jewel itself, not to mention everything that I'm using here. So this setup is considered high budget. The only things that I do not have on the setup is Prism of Belief, which you can use for the Stormmage, which is going to increase your crit speed by a lot because Prism of Belief does add a lot of DPS. For the Frostmage, I don't think you need the Prism of Belief because, I mean, you already killed the boss like 1 second. So I really don't think Prism of Belief for the Frostmage is necessary. But for the mapping, having the Prism of Belief will help the DPS by a lot. So with that said, let's move into the setup. So the first one, let's begin with the passive tree. So for the Ascendancy, it's still the same. Hellhound, Arthur Flash, Beta Cancer, Beta's Will, and this is the passive tree that I'm using. This is the crit setup. We are taking the crit node over here and over here. All the detail will be on the POP and master link, which will be available on the descriptions, including the trade link for the jewel. And it's also including like the weapon set too. This is for curse. I'm taking skill duration here. To be honest, you can take anything you want. And the curse setup also, because I'm using this chiming stuff over here, it's going to give us sigil of power, also give +7 level of cold spell gems. This is not going to affect your minion, but it's going to affect your hypothermia, which is the thing that you're going to use on the boss, which is going to increase the damage of your Frostmates. And the reason why I'm choosing the cold spell instead of the lightning spell, because this setup is only used on bossing, and for bossing we only going to use Frostmates, and this is the reason why I'm using hypothermia for the curse. I'm also still using again the darkness. The best stat for this one is plus spirit and plus increase maximum life. The another option is percentage strength. That is not bad, but increase maximum life is better. And for the jewel, this is most of my jewel. It has damage, it have minion crit chance, and we have minion critical damage bonus. And this is the expensive jewel it looks like. So it basically have all that 3 stat and plus maximum energy shield. So this one is not really necessary, and as you can see over here, I still have some note for the energy shield. Because this jewel is really expensive. I only have one, and I just bought it just to showcase like this is the jewel that are very expensive, and it's expensive for a reason because it's going to save you some passive points. So for example, if most of your jewel have increased maximum energy shield, you can have a choice on this node over here. So this is the node that's going to increase energy shield. This one also the node that's going to increase energy shield. Now if you already have enough energy shield from your jewel, you basically get like 1 to 3, 1 to 3, 4, 5. So you have like 8 points that you can spend somewhere else. And it probably going to go down here. We can take this part over here. It is going to give you 2 more jewel socket. That's basically what I recommend if you already have the jewel like this. But of course, most people probably won't have this one. And that's the reason why all my jewel, except for that one, is the jewel that are like this. Because this is expensive, but at least it's not crazy expensive. And for the anointment, I'm going for Deadly Swarm. This is probably the best anointment you can put in here. And another option is Endless Blizzard. This is going to give +1 to your Frostmates, but you're not only going to use Frostmates, right? So you want anointment that's going to work on both of the setup for Stormmage and also for the Frostmage. So I think something like Deadly Swarm is a lot better choice. It's also a lot cheaper anointment. And the next one, let's move into the skill gems. There's a few things that I need to explain. And once again, the detail of the skill gem is on the POB and the master link if you want all the detail. But for the skill gem, there is a 3 different setup. So number 1 is for the mapping, and this is the one that I'm using for mapping. I'm using Lip Slam with Holy Descent, Unbreakable, and Martial Tempo. And I also have 2 Stormmage over here. This Stormmage is for debuff, so I'm having it with Overcharge, Conductions, Lightning Exposure, Strip Away, and Lightning Mastery. And for the DPS one, I'm doing with Arcane Tempo, Feeding Frenzy, Elemental Focus, Minion Mastery, and Chain. Now, the Chain is really, really important. If you see on the tooltip over here, I have 35k DPS. If I take off the Chain, the DPS go up to like almost double. And Chain does come with a lot of downside, which is it reduces your damage by a lot. But look at the chain count. You only chain 2 times normally. And if you put Chain in, it's going to become 6. Now for mapping, the chain count is really, really important because that's going to help you clear a really dense pack. For example, like Breach, you're definitely going to need the chain. And for the Frostmage, for me, I like to have 2 Frostmage, and the function of the Frostmage is to freeze target around you. So it's more like a defensive reason. I'm doing it with Cold Mastery, Scatter Shot, Glaciation for more freeze buildup, and Wild Shot and Fork. So this is the setup for the mapping. And now, let's say you want to go bossing. So the first thing that I'm going to do bossing is I'm going to take off the Lip Slam because you're not going to use Lip Slam on bossing. And I will put in Hypothermia and Curse Ground, Heightened Curse, and Ritualistic Curse. This to give more area effect. And the other thing you need to change is also the Frostmage. Take off the Glaciations, take off the Wild Shot, and take off the Fork because all of them is useless on bosses. And you basically take the Arcane Tempo, Feeding Frenzy, and Minion Mastery from the Stormmage. And you basically remove all the Stormmage and put everything on the Frostmage. And this is basically the bossing setup. And now there probably are questions that why you're not putting Elemental Focus on your Frostmage. And the reason for it is because I want the boss to be freeze, so I don't have to worry about what the boss is going to do. If you want more DPS, for example, right now I have 41k. If I put if I put Elemental Focus over here, it gives you a little bit extra DPS, but you lose your freeze. And for me, I just do not want to deal with what the boss is going to do. So having a freeze, the boss going to die before the freeze ends. So that's going to make the bossing a lot simpler and a lot easier to do. This is the gem setup that I will use for the bossing. Another setup is specifically for Simulacrums. And the reason for that one is on Simulacrum, there is a mod where it's going to give the monster elemental resistance, and usually that is the problem with Simulacrum. So what you did on Simulacrum, because Simulacrum, you don't have that many monsters coming out at the same time, the density is not that high. So what I will do is I will begin from the mapping setup. So 2 Frostmage and everything else go to the Stormmage. Now for the Stormmage, I will change the chain with Lightning Pen, and I will change the fork with Cold Penetrations, and these 2 gems will basically mitigate the monster have extra elemental resistance on Simulacrums. And as far as I tried, Simulacrum is pretty easy with this setup, and the setup able to kill the monster on Simulacrum pretty fast, and the Frostmage still able to freeze them pretty consistently. So this is the setup that I'm using for Simulacrums. Everything else is basically the same, so there's a few changes you need to do on this 4 gem setup. Overall, the setup itself allow you to do all the content. You can do few gems swapping and you're pretty much good to go. And some people probably going to ask like, how about Lightning Penetration and Cold Penetration for the mapping versions? It has some use where you have a map mod that's going to give monster elemental resistance too. The problem is, if you have an Atlas like me, you basically have a lot of increased explicit modifier like this one, and like I think this one too, and also this one. So because you have a lot of effect of modifier, that elemental resistance become really high. I think it's go up to like 80 to 90% elemental resistance, and just minus 30% not going to help that much. And that's the reason why I'm not using this on the mapping. But if you have enough DPS, for examples, like if you already have like Wisdom of Belief, you probably can get away with this. So you basically can do that map mod. For me, I'm just do not include that map mod on my map. And for the gear itself, it's still pretty much the same. Like I said, the detail will be on the PvP and Max Roll. I don't think I need to keep repeating the same informations. And the Storm Mage actually do really good on maps. It pretty close to Arsonist, and I think if I have Prison of Belief, it probably can compete with Arsonist on mapping. So I am really happy with the Storm Mage. It does perform a lot better than I thought it will be. Because the first thing I fear about Storm Mage is when I'm not using the prototype, the damage will be too low, but apparently not. With crit setup, the damage from the Frost Mage is still good enough to clear the map pretty fast. Another question is probably can I do this on non-crit setup, which basically mean that we're going to scale cast speed and damage. The honest question is I don't know because I haven't tried, but the plan is I'm going to make this video first. I'm going to share this with you guys, and then after this I will try the non-crit setup and let's see if it works. If it works, I will make a video about it. If it's not, then I don't know. I'm going to find something else. So yeah, I think that's it for me today. And if you guys have any questions, leave in the comment below. I will try my best to answer it. If you like the video, consider like and subscribe. That will help the channel a lot. So thank you everyone for watching. Really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.